and announce the date. So this is online yoga with Via on May 11th of 2020. Let's start the way we always start, lying on your back with your knees bent and your head resting comfortably on a stack of towels. Take a minute. If you can't hear me, please put some note in the chat, or if anything's technically wrong for your experience, do that. Or if you have some other questions or feedback, I will try to respond to them on the go. Watching your breath coming into the room. I'm going to go shut a door because there's a lawnmower or something outside, but you're going to just stay in here and watch your breath. Okay. Let's do a vagus nerve reset. So bringing your hands behind your head, interlacing your fingers, or stacking them. If it's uncomfortable to interlace your fingers, you could stack them. Hi, Tarumi, Karen, Colleen.
Hi.
I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. Bringing your hands behind your head, and then just shifting your eyeballs to the right and waiting for an involuntary, an automatic yawn, sigh, gulp, swallow. And then coming back to center and switching to the other side, shifting only the eyeballs, nothing else moves. Triggering a vagus nerve reset. Watch for a yawn, swallow, sigh, or gulp. And go ahead and repeat 2 more sets, right and left. Your eyes can be closed or open. Finish up while your hands are behind your head. start to practice head ramping. So just pressing the back of your skull into your interlaced fingers or your stacked hands. Press, hold, breathe, release, repeat. And one more time. Take your hands to your side by your hips. And you could put a sponge ball under your head if you have a sponge ball. Actually, I think Dana always uses a sponge ball instead of stacked towels under her head. And just do a glide. So a C1 glide, basically just the chin drops about 10 degrees forward and then tilts back through center 10 degrees back. Protected by the ball. So hyperextension, that backward movement, I think is very tricky for anyone with neck and shoulder problems. But the ball keeps it safe. So I love to have the sponge ball for that. Do that a couple more times, and then just because you're here and you can, just go side to side, slowly side to side. Look left, look right, or right and left. We're going to do some breathing exercises. You can do that with your sponge ball behind your head, or you could put your sponge ball at your upper back to create a chest, a bigger chest, a chest opening. If you do put your ball lower in the upper back, upper mid-back, you may need a brick or something for your head. You may not want to hyperextend way back, something that supports it. I love the sponge ball for opening the chest. From here, just practice Ujjayi breathing. So keeping the mouth closed, breathing through the nose, making a sound like the sound of the wind or the ocean. It's your own personal sound. Probably no one else will hear it. But it's a really great breathing practice because it sends oxygen all the way down to your toes. Go ahead and make your hands into little claws, and we're going to massage the diaphragm where it attaches at the bottom of the rib cage. So just take your fingers and poke in. You're not poking on any organs except the diaphragm muscle. and poke along the edge of the rib cage. You can use both hands on one side, both claws, or you can put your claws one on one on one side of the rib cage, one on the other, and just go all the way up, all the way to the middle, to the sternum, near the sternum, and then come all the way down. This is a great relief for the diaphragm that sometimes gets stuck in the connective tissue, really, or gets stuck on the rib cage. And then while you're still poking, go ahead and breathe. Big diaphragmatic breath, so into the rib cage. And the fingers will probably pop out because you're still using your fingers to poke at the edges of your diaphragm. And go ahead and stop that. We're going to do a classic hypopressive, which is now breathwork, core work, and pelvic floor work. So the knees are bent, the toes are up toward the ceiling, and the heels are down, so dorsiflexing the ankles. And then bring your arms as if you're going to hug a tree in front of your chest and your armpits. And then flip your fingers so they're pressing towards the sky. And activate your shoulders and arms by pressing your palms toward the sky and your scapula into the floor. You're going to take 3 breaths, then hold your breath while I count for 10 counts. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Last breath, inhale, exhale. Hold your breath out, no breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inhale and exhale. Go ahead and extend your legs. We're going to do another 2 more hypopressives. Extend your legs and bring your arms up in front of you, and then the right ankle goes over the left ankle, and the left hand is on top of the right hand. And now bring your arms overhead. Wrist opener 2. Straighten your arms if you can. And we're going to count again. 3 breaths and then 10 counts of no breath. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. No breath. Hold your breath out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inhale and exhale. Switch sides. Left ankle over right. The arms come up. And the right hand is on top. Stack your hands. Bring your hands overhead. Arms overhead. Straight arms. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Hold your breath out, no breath after the exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Inhale and exhale. Nice work, everybody. Hypopressives. Let's go ahead and begin the sideline practice. So everyone lie on the side with your head on a brick. The shoulders are stacked. The hips are stacked. The knees are stacked and slightly bent. And the ankles are stacked. Now, Kathy, can you show them that if you need more room on your thick brick, you could turn it with even a little more height. The idea is to have enough room for your bottom shoulder to stack neatly under your top shoulder. So that's what you're trying to get at. If you don't have a brick, then find something else, a blanket or a sponge ball might work. And now we're going to start. This is we're going to do 3 moves for the shoulders, 3 more moves for the shoulders, and then 3 for the hips, and then switch to the other side. So the first 3 are a scapular, protraction, retraction, and then a lateral opening, abduction, adduction. You'll see these in a minute. And then the last one is an internal and external rotation of the arm bone. So all these 3 together, I'm trying to say them so that you can memorize them, so that this could be a practice you could do really easily when you're like, what can I do? What can I do? Okay, so the top arm is parallel to the floor. The bottom arm can be parallel or bent. Not worried so much about the bottom arm. You're going to move your scapula away from the spine. That's called protraction. And then move it back towards the spine, retraction. And try to make this a movement that is isolated in the scapula. The arm moves, of course, because the scapula moved. But you're not moving with your arm. That's one of the tricky parts. And don't move, if you can keep everything else quiet, keep the torso quiet. Feel the movement. This is a movement of the scapula on the rib cage. Think of the space that allows this movement to happen. Think of what's happening. Embody the movement. That's what embodiment is. It's a big word now. It's just trying to become aware of what your body is doing. So here the scapula is moving towards and away from the spine. Do a couple more of those. And then from here, pause and take your arm straight up to the ceiling, and then come back to the original position, parallel to the floor. And this is called sunrise, sunset, or it's lateral abduction and adduction of the arm bone. So you're moving the head of the humerus, the arm bone, the upper arm bone, in the glenohumeral joint at the shoulder. Think of that movement, embody that movement, or think of what's happening. Think of the space that allows that to happen. There's space between the head of the humerus and the glenohumeral. Just a little space, but which allows this movement. Slow is better. Slowly is better. And the next time your arm comes up towards the ceiling, we're going to start the third of the triplet. I teach in triplets so that you can remember in clumps of clumps of information. So go ahead and from your arm, and I like to do what Kathy's doing, which is to put my other arm in front of the arm bone so I can feel this. And then you're just going to move, internally rotate the head of the arm bone, rotate it toward the front, and then rotate it toward the back as far as you can. And internally rotating towards the front, towards your front, in front of you, and then internally, externally rotating behind you. And keep going. The trick here is to not have the arm or the wrist or the elbow lead the movement. It's a movement that happens at the head of the arm bone. If you bypass the arm bone and move at the wrist, you're cheating yourself, and actually you might eventually, if you do that repeatedly, if you ignore that movement at the arm bone, it may turn into frozen shoulder. Very painful. Best to avoid with a movement like this. Nice, everybody. And so that was all three, the first triplet. The second shoulder triplet. Go ahead and bring your arm down by your hip. Just rest for a minute. Take some breaths. And we're going to start with this next triplet. So on this one, you're going to start with a half of a technical snow angel. So this is actually two different levels of external rotation. So the first thing you're going to do is, with your hand arm straight on your hip, just externally rotate as far as you can to the back of you. And now bring your arm up slowly towards your ear. By the time it reaches your ear, or as far as you can get, the palm is facing down. Can you see that? Face down, Kathy? Yeah. So this is all should be a movement also at the head of the arm bone. Now bring your arm so it's facing forward, and then come all the way back to your hip. So each direction is a slightly different arm position. Can you see that? So now externally rotate farther. Palm is up. Slowly bring your arm up. This is the going up position. By your ear, or as close to your ear as you can get. And now when you're there, when you arrive, turn, hopefully at the arm bone, not at the wrist, but the wrist will turn forward, palm will turn forward. Now bring it back. Keep it forward. My fingers I'm doing this seated and my fingers are tingling. Go ahead and do it again. So I would do, in your home practice, if you, depending on the time you have, you can do this 6 to 12 times. Each of these movements. Now the idea is to keep your hips stacked, your shoulders stacked. Everything is quiet but this arm. There's a little bit of scapular movement here too, but you keep the torso quiet, the hips quiet, the thigh, pelvis. This is a movement that's just an arm movement. And do it a couple more times. Nice, very nice. Oops. And let's make this the last one. When your arm arrives and rests on the hip, pause and rest, maybe for a breath or two. And then we're going to do arm circles. The second of this triplet is arm circles. So just start your arm to go backwards first. So make a circle. Goes to the back, goes up by the ear, goes forward, and then along the hip. And keep going. Keep the torso steady, the shoulders stacked. And 2 more of these in this direction. Keep the shoulders stacked and the torso steady and quiet. And when you finish the last circle in this direction, then just switch to the other direction. One of the things I like about this side lying practice is that it allows us this particular movement. This is harder to do when you're standing up. You can still do it, but this is the very best position to be doing a big shoulder circle. Some people will not be able to, your circle may not look like Kathy's or mine. If you take it easy, if you try to keep this circle in the glenohumeral joint, so don't feel, if your chest starts to feel like your shoulder is going backwards, to create more of a circle, you want to rein it in and keep the circle in the glenohumeral joint. And stop when you're finished. Yeah, that's a good place to stop. And we're going to do flying pizza for the last on this shoulder triplet. Bring your arm, bend your elbow, keep your bent elbow tucked into your waist at all times for this entire movement. Bring the forearm forward, parallel to the floor, palm down. Yes, there. Now, from here, without moving the upper arm, the forearm goes back. And as you go back, you open up the palm into a tray. That's the flying pizza. It would look more like a flying pizza tray if you were seated or standing, which you can do this seated or standing. But you can do it here too. So the palm is down when you start, and it's facing your ear when you finish, and then return. This is a movement that creates stability in the rotator cuff muscles around the scapula. You should feel it at the upper back on the top side. Remember to stop early if you need to. Listen to your own body. Don't move in pain. Make your movement smaller if you reach pain, or stop altogether. And that's the end of that. You can shake your hand or your shoulder. That was probably a lot of work in the shoulder. I didn't do it all, so I'm guessing. But good. It's always good work. Those 6 shoulder movements are really good. Go ahead and extend your top leg. You could extend your bottom leg too, but it could be bent or straight. We're going to do 3 hip movements. The top leg is straight. The toes are drooping, just to engage the top of the side of the thigh more. And you're going to lift that leg up and then lower it. And up you go. This is an adduction or an abduction of the thigh. So it's the outside and inside of the thigh. Now, if you start to feel this movement in the groin, you've gone too far. If your hips aren't stacked, if you've dropped one hip, the top hip behind you to get higher, then you've gone too far. So this is a quiet movement within an abduction and adduction range. And one more. And then start to move forward and backward, that top leg, the same leg. You can add footwork by dorsiflexing on the way up, toes to nose, and then bringing the toes back, plantar flexing on the way back. So again, trying to keep the movement in the hip socket. So when you come forward, that is flexion at the hip, and then when you come back behind you, that is extension.
You have a pain, that means you bad hip, is that right?
I'm sorry, what?
If it hurts when you move like this,
Yes.
your hip is bad, is that right?
Well, what it means is that you're having some sort of issue with your hip. What it means for you in this practice is that you make it smaller, slower, or stop altogether. So this is not a practice where we're going for pain. And if, as you keep moving in a smaller, slower, pain-free range, you may be able to address the issue. Now, you also may want to see a doctor about it, but these movements can help with pain in the hips, whatever the source. There can be any number of sources. If it's arthritis, if it's osteoarthritis, which we get as we age, movement will help as long as you're not moving into pain. Well, that was enough talking and enough of that movement. Go ahead and bend your knees. And we're going to do clams, which probably everyone knows. The ankles stay together, the feet stay together, and the knee goes up and then back. So up and back. This is also abduction, adduction, just like the leg raises, the leg lifts, side-lying leg lifts. So if you start to feel this in the groin, you've gone too far, you've made it into a flexion, extension movement. Keep it in abduction, adduction. And if you want, after you've done 3 or 4, you can bring your knees a little closer towards your face, put your hand on your hip, and create a resistance stretch, a little farther down, hand, and then the hand. And then as you move up, the hand, this is a Kihara resistance stretching, and this is going to get into the glutes. You're going to feel this a lot. So as the hip moves up, the hand resists the movement of the hip. And as the hand pushes down, the thigh resists the downward movement. So in Kihara resistance stretching, you're stretching the belly of the muscle, and you're always moving and always resisting. If you do it too hard, this will hurt. This could hurt. So you want to make it softer. It's more of a dance than a war with the two directions. Always moving, always resisting.
Yeah.
And you should feel this in the glutes. How does this feel, Parvin?
It's not as bad as the first one.
Okay. You might want to leave out the first one and do this one.
Bad hip, I know that.
Yeah. So that's the entire practice. And we're going to flip to the other side.
The other side, okay.
Okay. Remember, you're stacking shoulders during this entire practice, sideline practice. Shoulders are stacked, hips stacked, knees stacked, feet, ankles stacked. So the first three movements are in the shoulder. Number one is scapula, protraction and retraction. Keep your arm straight. Make sure the movement comes from the scapula. Get to know the scapular movement. Protraction and retraction. Protraction is pulling the scapula away, sliding it over the ribcage away from the spine. And then retraction is the opposite, and it's pulling the scapula back over the ribcage towards the spine. And back and forth you go. Keep your arm straight. Make sure that the movement isn't happening in the arm. The arm moves because of the movement that was initiated in the scapula. Some people, actually, this is another way to get, if you don't engage this movement, if you don't protract and retract the scapula, if you stop doing that because you're injured or afraid something's happened, you stop moving this. This is another way to get a frozen shoulder. So this movement will help you reclaim that scapular movement. It's one of several scapular movements. Go ahead and take your arm up to towards the ceiling. This is an easier one, simpler. And then you just bring it back down. This is abduction, adduction, lateral abduction, adduction of the arm bone in the socket, in the gleno. It's a very shallow socket, this one. The shoulder is the most mobile and the most prone, the joint that is most prone to injury. Yeah, do one more and bring it up to the sky. Put your other hand in front of the arm bone. You're going to internally and externally rotate the head of the arm bone. So make this a movement that starts at the head of the arm bone, even though what happens is the wrist will move as well. So move the shoulder to move the wrist. Or move the shoulder and just notice that the wrist moves with the shoulder. That's the last of that set, the set of 3, the triplet. And just shake your arm and wiggle your shoulder, and we'll go to the next 3. The first one is angel, snow angels, or half a snow angel, starting with your arm along your hip, and then rotated, externally rotated out as far as it can go. and then up by the ear. Nice. When you get up to the top, change so that the rotation is, it's still it's a degree of external rotation, but the palm is facing the forward. You're working on two different degrees of external rotation of the arm bone at the glenohumeral joint. Once you arrive at your ear, the palm comes facing forward. Bring the arm down to the hip. And then when you're done at the hip, externally rotate even more. This is the most extreme external rotation you can find. And then bring your arm up. By the time you get to the top, it's facing the floor. Do one more of those. And then start to circle your arm. You can shake it for a minute if you want, because this can be a very intense workout. I love the fact that a lot of these supine workouts are extreme. Go ahead and circle. Now Kathy started forward this time. Just to make a note of it. Don't get confused. We started backwards last time. It doesn't matter. You can go. So we started forward this time. Just because just to show how flexible we are in mind and body. Slowly, delicious. This is a delicious movement. And with very little cueing, you don't have to think about it because the arm has to do what it does when it circles like this. It has to rotate a little bit to bypass the acromion, which is a bony landmark in your shoulder. But you don't have to think about it. The body just does it. It's one of the nicer features of this shoulder circle. Breathing, thinking about what's happening so that you can embody this movement, become totally aware of the breath and the movement and what's happening on the inside of the body. It's called interoception. Interoception, I think. Switch the other direction. If you start to feel like your arm, when you go to the back, if you start to feel like your chest is also going towards the back, you just need to reorganize your shoulders so that they're stacked over the one over the other. Just do one more of those. And the last of this triplet for the shoulders, this is the second shoulder triplet in the side-lying classic practice. Go ahead and shake out your shoulder or your hands if you want to first, because this is a lot of work. Bend your elbow, keep your elbow tucked in with your forearm parallel to the floor, palm facing the floor. And this is called a flying pizza. So now you're going to take your forearm, bring it back, and open it up. Open the palm up. And then return it. And that's the movement. So the forearm goes back. Try to keep your forearm in a 90-degree angle. Back and forth you go. You should feel this in the upper back, right around the scapula. If you have a rotator cuff injury, if you want to avoid a rotator cuff injury, if you want to create good posture, this is a great move for that, all of that. One more time. And if you were standing or seated, you could do this with both hands at the same time. We're going to start on the leg triplet. Straighten the top leg. The bottom leg can be straight or bent, slightly bent. And droop the toes and lift the leg. Up you go and down, just like Jane Fonda, only not as far because she would move her butt farther back to create more height, and we're not going to do that. This is a more pure movement, slow and within your own range of motion. Some people will be able to get up higher than others. And if this hurts, well, I should check with Parvin. Is this hurt on this side too, Parvin?
That is better. Thank you.
Better? Go ahead and bring your leg back down to neutral and then forward, flexion, and you can dorsiflex your feet and backward, which is called extension. So back and forth you go. You may notice I don't get as far back when I go back, the extension. You're adding footwork by dorsiflexing as you come forward and plantar flexing as you go back. Nice. If this hurts, stop. Or make it slower, smaller. This is a practice about becoming aware, moving your body, becoming aware of the movement, and increasing the range of motion by making sure that your movement is quiet and pure and pain-free. Come on back, bend your knees. We're going to do clams. Shake your leg if you need to. And this one, the knee just goes up, the ankles stay together. And remember, you don't want to drop your top hip behind you. It's a stacked open and close. If you start to feel in the groin that you're moving a muscle in the groin, that's a psoas muscle probably, or a hip flexor, one of the hip flexors or more, and you don't want to do that because this is an abduction-adduction movement. And then you want to add a little resistance. Go ahead and put your hand on your hip. You may need to bring your knees a little closer to your face. And then as you move, make this a Kihara resistance stretching practice. So you've created resistance between your hand and your outer thigh. When the thigh moves up, the hand resists that movement. When the hand moves down, the thigh resists. So always resisting and always moving. You'll feel this this is a great glute practice. You should start to feel it in the glutes, and pretty soon you should feel a burn. And you could probably do this till fatigue. If you were home and you had an unlimited amount of time, you could do this until you couldn't do it, basically, and then you'd say, I give up. Okay, that's the entire side lying practice. I hope I do it every 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. So hopefully someday you'll say, oh, I can do that. I can't think of anything to do, but I can think of that. Come up to a seated, floor seated. I promised Dana that I was going to show you another Kihara resistance that we've done. It's started in staff pose with your legs straight out in front of you. Why don't you go to the side, Kathy, so we can see you on the side. Legs straight out in front of you. Bend one knee and hug it to your chest. And the foot of the bent knee is off the floor. Now you're going to curl like a cat-cow. You're going to curl and roll back as far as you can without falling. See if you can do it farther than that, maybe. And then as you come back, use your core and your psoas to bring yourself back to straight. So you fold, curl back as far as you can. This is a psoas stretch and strengthener. Keep your straight leg on the floor. If it starts to lift, you're going too far. This is one that needs repetition to get better at it. And then bring it up, come on up, use your psoas and your core to bring yourself up. And come on back. And switch sides. The other leg straight, this one bent, and off the floor. So the bent leg is off the floor. You're hugging it tight. It's the fulcrum that keeps you moving here. Curl. So you should feel some core work as you curl back. Roll back as far as you can without falling. And then bring yourself back up to seated. And rolling back. And coming forward. And do it a couple more times. This is one of my favorite poses that Carrie Collins teaches in her stretch class. Find your favorite seated position. We're going to do a spine twist and then a side bend. That'll be the end of it. Maybe a few finger stretches. Bring your hands to your heart and put your fingers underneath your chin. And then you're going to rotate the rib cage to the right. The rib cage rotates, the thoracic spine rotates. Rotate to the right, and then come back to the center, and left. This is a very small, precise spine twist, thoracic spine twist. And a couple more of those. And the fingers keep the chin from doing the twist. So that's all that is. Feel what's happening. There are a bunch of vertebra, thoracic vertebra, protected by the rib cage. When you move the rib cage, those vertebrae rotate. It's a small rotation. Small, important rotation. And then stop your movement. And we're going to do a side bend, starting on the right, just taking the just crunching the right to the side. So just dropping, curling over, keeping your hips level, and curling over to the right side. You may want to put your left hand on your rib cage, just for the teapot effect. Come back to center. And other side, just dropping, drooping, rounding. Make sure that this all happens at the waist, so your hips stay grounded and even. You may want to put your other arm on your rib cage for a teapot. I'm a little teapot. Come on back. And one more time, each side. Other side. Come up to seated. Put your hands in prayer pose. We're going to do a wrist stretch. Take the right hand and start to move it forward and down. Yes, and then press. Press, 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 press. Wrist stretch. Take some breath. Come back, prayer pose. The left hand, the fingers go forward and down. Nice. Breathe. Press. Bring your hands out in front of you. Cross one hand in front of the other. Fingers interlaced. So you're going to bring your hands out in front of you and then cross them and bring the palms together. Nice. That's it. Now interlace your fingers and then bring them forward, under, down, under, and forward. Wrist and fingers. And you may not be able to, if this is the first time you've ever done this, or the first time in years, you may not get very far. So just do the best you can, and then come back out and switch sides. And then scoop down and around and toward the chin. Breathe. And then release, shake your hands out. And press each finger, starting on your right hand, press the finger backward. And press. This is actually very good for arthritis in the fingers. Press. And for keyboarding. So do all of the fingers and the thumb, press it back, and then you can come all the way back before you do the other hand. Press, press, so you're pressing them back, behind you. Other side.
I'm lost.
What?
I'm lost.
Oh, you're lost? We're just switching to the other side. Stretching the fingers behind you. I mean, I didn't mean behind. So backwards rather than forward. The fingers stretch behind the fingers. One at a time, please. One at a time. Each finger back behind itself. Wasn't a very good cue. And then just come all the way back. And when you're done, find your way onto your back for Yoga Nidra and the closing of the class. Remember, if it's cold, you may want to cover yourself with a blanket. You may want to put a washcloth over your eyes. Your legs can be extended or bent. Start to notice your breath. As the abdomen rises and falls. Now bring your awareness to the center of your eyebrows, center of your throat, right shoulder, elbow, wrist, right hand thumb, second finger, third finger, fourth finger, fifth finger, right wrist, elbow, shoulder, center of your throat, left shoulder, elbow, wrist, left hand thumb, second finger, third finger, fourth finger, fifth finger, left wrist, left elbow, shoulder, center of your throat, spiritual heart center, right side of your chest, heart center, left side of your chest, heart center, navel center, center of your pelvis, right hip, right knee, right ankle, right big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, fifth toe, right ankle, knee, hip, center of your pelvis, left hip, left knee, ankle, left big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, fifth toe, left ankle, knee, hip, center of your pelvis, navel center, heart center, center of your throat, center of your eyebrows. This concludes your 61-point guided meditation. Go ahead and start to notice your breath. Thank yourself for bringing yourself to the practice today. This is what self-care is all about. Extend your legs, bring your arms overhead, and stretch your body in both directions, trying to create a little bit more space between your pelvis and your rib cage. Wiggle your toes and your fingers. You should feel a little more circulation in your fingers. And then go ahead and hug your knees one at a time. Rock your knees from side to side. Bring yourself up to seated. And we'll close the class by kind of finding a floor-seated position. Bringing your hands to your heart. Gliding your occipital ridge, the base of your skull, over the top cervical vertebra, C1 side. Nod. We'll say to each other, Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Good class.
Nice to be with you all.
You.
I'm going to shut the recording out, but we can still talk.